The moon waves wide and black.
I think that you raise your glass.
Hello, I'm Angus Cress Gillespie, Professor of American Studies at Rutgers University in New Brunswick. I also serve on the Board of Trustees of the East Brunswick Public Library, which plays host to Channel 3 here in Civic Center in East Brunswick. Today, I'm here with Najma, who was born and raised in England, but her music shows her ancestral roots in India. She's a composer, a singer, an actress. She's toured all over the world, Europe, North America, and Asia. And she has a very exciting project coming up. She and guitarist Gary Lucas are going to be performing at Joe's Pub on Saturday, May the 3rd, Joe's Pub being on Lafayette Street in Manhattan. And Joe's Pub is known for its outstanding presentation of live music and the diversity of the artists that it features. Najma, you've been all over the world. Where now do you consider home?
Oh, that's a very good question. No, the easy answer. London, England is my home.
Okay.
I love being in London.
What events led you to decide to pursue career in music? I recall your early education was in chemical engineering, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, I'm from a typical Asian family, business family, and education was one of the things that we had to have. You had to be a doctor. If you couldn't be a doctor, you had to be a lawyer or a barrister, and the next best thing, engineer. So I couldn't make the doctor, but I became an engineer. And during the course of my studies, I became interested in a particular form of music called the ghazal. On the Indian subcontinent, it was becoming very popular. And ghazal means poem. It's an Arabic, Persian word, and it's often related to love, very romantic. Almost like the analogy is to American country and Western. I feel a great synergy there,
yes,
in terms of lyric, in terms of the poetical depth, and even the singing style. It's very melodic and very beautiful.
Emotional.
Emotional as well, yeah. So anyway, I became interested in that form of music, and a UK-based company heard me on TV. I won a song competition in England. I won't say what year because it was ages ago. And they came and met my parents and said, look, we want to do this project, taking the ghazal form and making accessible for non-Asian people. But on the Indian subcontinent, the lyrics are very important. If you don't understand the lyrics, then you don't get the plot. So how do we compensate for the fact that non-Asian people won't understand Urdu? And one of the ideas was to use integrate it with a different form of Western music. And the closest music form that we came to was jazz. So jazz had a similarity with Indian music because you have all the different rhythms, the different scales, the improvisation, so instant connection. And I think Indian classical maestros had dabbled in it many years before. So it was one of the forms that we used. I eventually recorded an album. My first album was called Kareeb. And it was a gamble for Triple Earth, which was the record label at the time, and for us, because we were thinking, oh God, what do these English guys know about poetry? They don't understand the lyrics. But the sound was so different. It was so unique at the time in 1988, 87, 88, and there was really nothing on the sort of Western world sort of music, if you want to use that term, but that was coming from England that had that sound, and it took off in a very big way.
Well, I know you're also a songwriter.
Yeah, now that's another story.
Well, I wanted to ask you, where did the ideas come from?
Yes, I was just...
How do you go about it?
Yeah, I really don't know. It's just an inspirational thing that happens on the spur of the moment, or maybe something kindles. I listen to something, or something inspires me, and like all writers, all creators, something has to maybe inspire them to create something different. And I have to give big thanks to, again, Triple Earth, because they were the instigators, and they, on the second album, when we started recording it, they said, Najma, why don't you write your lyrics? And I said, but you know, Indian singers never write. They never write their lyrics like Western
It's all
pop bands.
traditional.
It's traditional, yeah. You have the poets, like how would you say, the Cole Porter would write and singers would sing. So in India and Pakistan, you would have the poets would write the ghazal, and the singers would take the poetry and compose according to the mood of the poem.
Sort of like Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah. So that was, but they said, Najma, why don't you try writing? So I was very lucky. They gave me my first opportunity. Whether it failed or passed, I was not to know. But at the time, it was challenging, and I wrote the lyrics and composed the melodies for 2 songs, and it was on the album, my second album, Atish.
What's the hardest part about writing a personal song, say, as opposed to a political song?
Oh, the hardest part. Well, the subject matter, and I have to say that when I listen a lot to Western songs. Well, recently, I was brought, even though I was born and brought up in the UK, I've had a heavy dosage of Indian music since I was a child, because my parents were in the Indian film business, and they had a printing business. They were connected with the film distributors, so I'd get to see lots of Bollywood movies, and obviously the music comes with it, and the lyrics of Bollywood songs are always romantic, always love-based, and I always wondered, why don't they write songs about politics and throw one in a Bollywood movie, or write songs about the hardships of life? But they tend not to. And if you listen to blues lyrics and other sort of Western singers, the lyrics are so, the content is so different. And when you say what is so hard about writing a political or a personal song, it's hard generally.
They're both hard.
They're both hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not a poet. Like you have the masters of the literature, like Shakespeare or Chaucer, on the Western side, and Keats and all that. And we have our Ghalib, and we have our poets as well, contemporary and as well as very old, well-renowned poets. And there is a rhyme and meter like in Western poetry, but the Urdu language, I was schooled in England, so I've never studied Urdu. And I'm very blessed, and I can actually speak it and sing it without having an accent. Like when European people speak French, they tend to have like an accent, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been going to France a lot, so I know, but I don't have that problem in the Urdu or the Hindi. So I have listened to a lot of Urdu songs, and most of my songs are love-based, because that's what I've been influenced with, and that's what I've grown up with. But on listening to things like, you know, I woke up in the morning and I saw the sun rising. How would you say that in Urdu, like in a blues song? Yes, you can say it in Urdu, but you can't say it as colloquial as I woke up in the morning. If you say it in Urdu, it wouldn't sound romantic, it wouldn't sound nice. You'd have to say it in a much more phrased, in a much more romantic way. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's
it
very
doesn't
hard.
translate directly.
You're so right.
Yeah.
It doesn't translate. That's the best way of putting it, yes.
You've toured quite a bit over the years. Do you regard the touring as a chore, as a grind, or do you look forward to it?
It depends how long a tour is.
Okay.
I know people. I worked with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page on a project of theirs a couple of years ago, and they went on tour, and their tour was over a year, and I was aghast. Oh God, is this what Western musicians do? They go on for a year, and
It's very hard life.
it is. But in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, they don't do that. They don't have the concept of going away for 6 months. It's a strange concept, you know, which I'm hearing about more and more, because people like yourself always say it's very grueling, and yes, I can imagine how intense it must be. My tours have been to a certain degree short, like a week in Europe. London Eurostar, 3 hours. It's so easy to go hop back and forth.
Yeah.
Japan, I was there for like 2 weeks. Australia, 2 weeks. So they've never been as grueling as I get to hear how people work so hard at it, and it
Yeah,
must be really hard.
You hear these stories about how people live for the applause, and then they feel very lonely afterwards.
Yes. I'm not one of those people though, but I do understand. You know, when you talk about all these superstars that perform to thousands of people at any one go.
It's easy to see how they would fall into that.
I remember performing in Mexico on the Page and Plant tour, and I sang, and there must have been 50,000 people there, and I'd never done that before, and that was just amazing. It was just an amazing.
Fills you with energy.
It does fill you with energy, but it scares the. I was going to say out of you, but it scares the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a social activist?
Social activist.
Well, I know you've done work in Kosovo and Pakistan.
Yes, and I'm impressed you know that,
Yeah.
yes. I, during the Bosnian War, I remember I went over, I don't know, sometimes it takes something to make you want to physically do something. And I was at a point in my life where I wanted to go and help. There was a school that was being set up in Sarajevo, and I volunteered to go. And it was at a time of the year when we just finished our fasting period, and so people give money for charity. And once people knew I was going, it was really strange, but a lot of people started giving me money, dollars and pounds and francs, euros. And I ended up taking thousands of pounds over to Bosnia in my hand. And I remember going to Heathrow Airport and going to the money Bureau de Change, and I saying, I've got this money, but it needs to be in Bosnian currency. What is that? Can you change it? I can't remember what it was at the time, but they changed it, and they didn't charge me because I told them I was going to.
How nice.
How very nice.
Yeah.
They didn't charge me the commission at Heathrow Airport. They normally do. And I remember taking these thousands of pounds over. Well, it wasn't pounds, I don't know what it was, but and going there and helping them set the school up, and then going around to various, because I thought as a singer maybe I could do something in terms of music and collaboration. The war had just finished, and I'd been to the side of Bosnia, of Sarajevo, where the shelling had happened, and the buildings were just derelict, and there was another side of Sarajevo that was also very happening and busy, and they were getting back together, you know, with their lives. And then going out into the refugee camps and seeing all the refugees living in containers, you know, these 20-foot, 40-foot containers. And
shipping containers.
Yeah, shipping containers. And sitting with them in front of a small fire and just sharing things with them. It was amazing, and giving money to them and seeing how happy they were.
Just directly.
Directly,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
To the people who needed it most.
To the people who needed it most, and that was a great thing. And the other thing I did was I happened to be on my way to India, and I was in Pakistan for a few months in 2005, I think, it was 2005, October, and the earthquake happened on the 8th of October.
And you were there.
I was there, and I was on the 9th floor of our apartment, and the building started shaking. I'd never been in an earthquake before, and my mother was with me. She had been in the Californian earthquake 20 years before.
So she knew what it was.
She knew what was happening. She said, you know, Najma, there's an earthquake's about to happen. I said, don't worry, I'll be fine. I thought it was a tremor, but boy, oh boy, it just didn't stop. It went on for like maybe 3-4 minutes, and the intensity grew each second. And you just could not stand. You were being literally thrown from side to side. And unfortunately, the building in front of our building, which is not too far, it came down in front of me as I went onto the balcony. And I saw it coming down. So reminiscence of 9/11, and very hard time. And just to be there at that moment in time, I was meant to be there, I suppose, maybe, in that terrible place at the right time. And I got the opportunity to go to many UN cluster meetings within Islamabad, because the Americans had come, and the French and the British and Japanese, and I managed to get to the bases, the air bases, and go on the Chinook helicopters to the remote areas where the earthquake.
And to help out.
And help out and drop supplies off and pick up the wounded, and just attending the meetings as well to see what they were doing in terms of sanitation, education, and all those kind of things. There was too many. It was too chaotic.
Yeah.
I think even the Americans and the other Western powers that were there were not sure how to handle it, because the terrain was so inaccessible with the continuous tremors that kept on happening. But having the opportunity to go to Kashmir, and literally on New Year's Day be in Kashmir on New Year's, on the first of, you know, the first of the new year.
Yeah.
I was there in terrible conditions, icy cold, and to be in a small village which had huge devastation around it. Children had died, and
Well, that's a memory that will be with you for the rest of your life.
it will. You know what I started doing? I started writing, not a daily diary, but I started writing what I was feeling, and I was writing a diary, and every time I came back, I just typed on the computer and just what I felt,
Yeah.
and I emailed them to different people. And Gary Nesbitt was one of the people that I emailed them to, and they became, instead of 1 page, 2 page, they grew into like 5 pages, and just describing what I was seeing and what was happening. And from those stories, I had the most amazing responses from people all over the world, from Japan, Australia, and even people in Ireland. They arranged, they wanted to arrange a charity show, send me the money. And I said, please don't send me any money. I don't want to be responsible for money.
You were just trying to do things at that point.
But yes, but they were so insistent, and they did it.
Yeah.
They
So-
sent me £1,000.
So you had no choice.
I had to open a separate bank account, and that was a hassle because I didn't, you know, wanted to do it properly. Every penny
Was accounted for.
was accounted
Yeah.
for. Yes.
I'd like to get back to the music. Perhaps you can take us through some of the personal highlights of your excellent debut album.
Ah, yes. Well, the first album. Well, there are many highlights.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
first, I'm so
Just
blessed.
mention a couple.
Yeah. Okay. The debut album, performing at Glastonbury, my first ever performance, Glastonbury, and my producers were so happy they were getting an opportunity on the WOMAD stage, World of Music, Arts and Dance,
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel's company, and Najma, you know, we've got to do it. And Glastonbury, what's Glastonbury? I said, pop festival. My parents said no, whoa, drugs and everything
Yeah, of
bad. You
course.
know, when you
The word
think
festival,
about
yeah.
yes, eventually
That made them think of Woodstock.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, all the vices and stuff. And eventually I got to perform there, and that was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And then the second one was in those early days performing at Ronnie Scott's, which is a great jazz venue in London, renowned.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't realize the response would be so wonderful, but it was in the Evening Standard in those days. I mean, even now, a great daily sort of evening paper. I remember seeing my photo and an article, small, but when I came to perform, I remember I did the sound check, I went home, I came back, and then I couldn't get into the venue because the line was so, it was like a snake, it was kind of winding outside, and I was terrified. And I knew George, people from Talking Heads were going to be there, and Boy George was there, and I was just petrified.
And who were you?
Yeah, and who was I, you know? But there had been, as I was saying earlier on, there had been such positive press about the album because it was so fresh and so different that it interested a lot of Western musicians that liked Indian music. And Boy George always had this affinity. He was always doing things with Indian musicians. So that was a highlight. And then working with Andy Summers from the Sting. He was living in California at the time, and doing a song with him, and just, well, a whole row of things. But I think.
Well, since that time, what have been a couple of your most memorable live shows?
My life in Paris, a place called Théâtre de la Vie, which is in the center of Paris, and I had 4 concerts there. And I remember they were all sold out, and there were people.
Wow.
It's an amazing venue. I mean, it's not humongous, but it's beautiful.
The theater of life.
Yes, yes. And it has a large capacity, but there were people sitting on the steps. And I remember my brother had come to Paris for it, and he got off the metro, and as soon as he got off the metro, there was a huge poster of his sister confronting him. And I remember him telling me he was very pleased about that. That was a wonderful performance. And then I did one in Brazil about 5 years ago, where it was a festival of female voices. And I did it in a slightly different way to how I normally do it. The audience were absolutely spellbound with what I did. And it was just a wonderful performance as such, and again my brother was with me, And he just came up to me, and he said it in Urdu. He kind of swore, but he said, "What a great performance!" You know, it was one of those performances that I think I sang just immaculately.
Yeah, you know when that happens.
I know when, and it doesn't happen all the time. I shouldn't be saying that on camera, but but yes, it was just one of those. And there was one more. I think it was the Vancouver Jazz Festival, and I had been performing in Seattle at the Bumbershoot Festival, and I'd gone over to Canada. And I think we had maybe 4 standing ovations, and they kept on, the audience kept on calling us back to come and do one more, one more, one more. And that was very memorable, very moving.
We touched on this before, but maybe we could follow up a little bit. What are the main influences on your style?
Well, my first love is Indian classical music. And I didn't know that when I started singing. It's again one of those things that as you get older and you wise up to the depth of music and the creativity of music, the essence of it, I started diving into the more traditional form of ghazal, and then going beyond that, the more traditional form of, well, classical music. The basis of Indian music is classical music. If you talk about ghazal, I listened to a husband and wife duo, Jagjit and Chitra, very famous on the Indian subcontinent at the time, very big. And they sang a simplified form of the ghazal, and that got me into it. And then I regressed, if you could say that, or progressed, whichever way. Then I started listening to the maestros like Mehndi Hasan, Ghulam Ali, and Begum Akhtar, and those type of Indian singers that are well known on the Indian subcontinent, and trying to understand what they do and how they do it with the ghazal. Because I was, when I recorded Kareeb and Atish and Pukar, I was taking the ghazal format, but I was singing it in my style, how I was capable of doing it, because I never studied Indian music. So it was all a slow, steady learning process as I went on my, musical journey. And then jazz. When the idea of jazz was introduced, I said, well, I don't know anything about jazz, I've heard of Cole Porter, I've heard of Nina Simone, and, those kind of, the greats, if you like. But I don't know the essence of jazz. And that has been a slow learning process for me as well. But we took elements of it. We didn't use sort of heavy, hard, traditional jazz. We just used elements of it. And that just gave a different touch to what I was doing.
So you fused the two.
Yes, I fused the two.
Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how you met your current performing partner, Gary Lucas, the guitar player.
Yes, well, it's a long story, but I'll try, because I talk so much, I'll try and keep it short. On my way back from Pakistan, I was there for 7 months. I had met another musician through the internet, and they wanted me to record a song in New York. And I remember I was traveling from Pakistan, came to London for 1 week. I had a concert in London and a recording with a DJ. Then I came to New York to record with this saxophone player called Stan Harrison. In the meantime, I had been, through my emails and my stories, I had met Gary Nesbitt on the email, and we'd been connecting. He'd reached out to me sometime before that.
And Gary lives in?
Gary lives in New Jersey,
yeah.
Yes, with his wife Terry. And he loves blues. He's a music lover. He's a lover of arts, and he actually loved my albums, Pukar and Kareeb and Atish. And through that connection, he managed to get in touch with me some time back. But I think through my emails, the stories that I was writing about my experiences with the earthquake and the relief effort that was going on, we became more connected. And then he really wanted to meet up with me and see if he could help me sort of branch out in my musical creativity. And we met in New York at that time. It was 2006. And
so
then
he was sort of your bridge to the New York and New Jersey area.
Definitely was, yes. And not only the bridge to the area, but the bridge to connecting me with Gary Lucas.
Yeah.
Because when we met for the first time, I did mention to him that I want to do loads of things. I was recording an album in Paris at that time, and I want to do something with Indian African music. I want to do something with Indian and blues. I want to do something with the old jazz standards and try and sing them myself, but in my own way. So I had lots of different ideas. So he took the blues sort of angle. And then as soon as I went back to London, his mind was ticking away, thinking, right, I got to connect Najma up with someone, you know. And Gary Lucas was one of the people.
Well, that leads to my next question, which is, I understand you've been doing some recording in Highland Park with Kurt Rio and in the House of Vibes.
Absolutely.
How did those sessions go?
Well, they went very well. The first session happened in October after I'd met Gary Lucas. He'd come to London, and we kind of jammed together in my sitting room, and I came up with some tunes, and I told Gary Nesbitt, and he said, "You've got to come and record them." I said, but you know, I was kind of pulling back, but he said, "You've got to come."
You weren't quite ready.
Yeah, I was always an excuse, of course.
Yeah.
And then he says, "I know this really nice studio. It's called House of Vibes, and the guy who runs it's Kurt Rail, and he's really good. And why don't you come and record here?" So anyway, we did, and we did 4 songs in October, and the outcome was absolutely superb. I mean, absolutely fantastic. Kurt, as an engineer and musician, was fantastic. And of course, Gary Nesbitt got it all together. You need someone to kind of egg it on and push it and be an instigator.
And that's what brought you to New Jersey.
And that's what brought me to New Jersey. And of course, House of Vibes, I think, is in Highland Park.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, this is called the Garden State, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's great to be in this part of America, because I've been to New York, but I've never actually
Crossed the Hudson.
Yes, you're right, across the Hudson. And so I'm here again now, recording a couple of more songs that we've written, and it's an amazing project. It's a very new, unique project, because the idea of having a blues or even a kind of a rock-based sort of music background, and with Indian lyrics, Indian melodies, and me being the Indian element, and using the main rhythm, pulse, tabla, the Indian percussion, as the driving force in terms of rhythm. It's such an innovative.
Have you ever been tempted to alternate stanzas, English and Urdu, sort of to explain it to your Western?
No,
Have you ever been
Angus,
tempted?
you're talking my kind of language. Yes, I have. Now there's some people like it, some people don't like it.
There's a great example of Freddie Fender. He was Mexican, and he would alternate between Spanish and English,
Yes.
and so he reached out to both audiences.
Yes, I have done that, yes, but I haven't actually officially released anything like that. But I have done it.
Well, maybe that's something that we'll see in the future.
Yes, yes. With this project that I'm doing with Gary Lucas, Gary Nesbitt, in fact, Gary Lucas picked out a blues song which is called Special Rider by Skip James. And I said, I can't sing that. And then Gary Nesbitt saying, yes, you can, Najma, yes, you can. Just go with flow and make it yours. And so I've kind of, it sounds so simple. When you listen to it, it sounds so simple. But when you come to sing it, the way Skip James has delivered it, no one can better it. And but maybe if I do it in my way, which I am going to do,
of course,
it will be different. But the way he's, the way Skip James has sung it is just beautiful.
You and I were talking just yesterday about this category that your work has been placed in, world music. Is there a part of you that gets annoyed with that designation?
I was thinking about what you said, yes, and no, it doesn't really bother me, because it's a very convenient way of summing it up. And yes, a lot of people get angry about it. But I was thinking about Indian music. To a non-Indian person, you've got classical, you've got ghazal, you've got Tumri, you've got Gujarati, you've got Bengali, you've got, there's just numerous. How could you, to someone who's not familiar with Indian music, the best way to sum it up is to actually, unfortunately or fortunately, say it's part of the world music.
Yeah. Because we're talking about a whole subcontinent.
Yes, yes, and the same for the African subcontinent, the Arabian subcontinent. So.
Well, Najma, I really want to thank you for coming to visit us in East Brunswick, and we're looking forward to your appearance. I want to remind our listeners that Najma will be performing at Joe's Pub. It's on Lafayette Street in Manhattan. It'll be Saturday, May the 3rd. The show starts at 9:30 p.m. And of course, Joe's Pub is one of the best venues for the performance of live music in New York City. And it's known for its diverse performers such as Najma. So thanks very much for tuning in.